Welcome back to Fresh Outlook, where we are talking about the serious situation in Syria. And there are now talks, Dr. Bart Rossi and, of course, Dee Dee Benkie, thank you for staying on. There are now talks that there are anti-war marches in both Washington, D.C. and London. So it's not just that the U.S. is divided, but apparently so are a lot of folks overseas. What is this going to do as we look ahead to this week? Because this is really a monumental week.
I think the psychology going forward this week is going to be very interesting because we have factions in both parties, not only with the Tea Party and the Libertarians on the right, probably not wanting to do anything, but we have some Democrats who don't really want to go into any kind of war situation at all. So my fear going into this week is, are we going to have some conflict, another conflict in Congress, and that will make us not look very well.
Well, Chuck Schumer, Democrat, of course, in New York, is in favor, and so are quite a few of the other Democrats. If you can kind of break it down for us, Dee Dee, as the political advisor, if you will, to Fresh Outlook, if you can kind of break it down what we're seeing in Congress.
It really is split, man. I have to tell you, and it's interesting to what you said about London. I mean, that was so incredible that, you know, because usually they're with us. They're our allies, England, and, you know, this is something that they would usually back. So I don't know if that would have any impact on, you know, on Americans, perhaps a little bit. But I think with this, I mean, there are so many moving parts. And I think what is telling is that this war has been going on for 19 months.
And more than 100,000 people have been killed already.
Exactly. So I think, strangely enough, because there's been so much going on in our country, that finally some of our members of Congress and Americans are like, wow, this is really tragic. And just like the Turkish Prime Minister said, it's a humanitarian disaster. It is really something that we need to take a look at as Americans, but also as citizens of the world. And I just think at this point in time, people realize how bad it is. So, you know, it's difficult, and you do have the Republicans and Democrats split. This is not all Republicans agreeing, not all Democrats agreeing. In fact, a lot of the Republicans on the very far right side are saying, stay out of it, forget it. They're being like isolationists, like Rand Paul.
Yeah, and I think your comments, though, are very pointed, and I think they're accurately pointed in this one situation. I look at it, though, a little differently, because I think Americans and people in Congress are really frustrated with this whole war effort and our warmongering and nation building.
It's not fair to take other wars you may not have agreed with and say, okay, well, you know what, we're just tired of this, so we're not going to do the right thing. I mean, I understand being worried, but it doesn't mean you don't do the right thing and step up and help these poor people.
When you saw those images of those children, and they say
being burned to death, being tortured.
More than 400 children. I mean,
how can we sit idly by and deal with that?
That's right. And if you do nothing, then are you really saying, well, okay, we'll wait for the next time. We'll wait for Assad to do this again, and then perhaps again. So, I mean, how do you punish someone? How do you take charge and at the same time do nothing? So I agree, Dee Dee. I mean, we have to do something, and I think the people on the far right, the libertarians, are going to be in a little bit of a conflict on this one.
And
let's talk about the world's citizens, as you said. We've got a lot of countries like Lebanon and, of course, Turkey that are seeing so many refugees going into their country. You know, how they're going to be feeling. I mean, everybody is watching this situation around the world right now. This is a really, as you said, sort of like the President Johnson's moment.
Oh my, yeah, it's really a difficult situation. It's just like Turkey, because, you know, they share such a long border. We really need to listen to our friends there, and they want the help. You know, they think that the United States has not acted strongly enough. I agree with Turkey on that. You know, so we've got Turkey, we've got Israel, we've got friends there. That we need to be a team effort. Who cares about the people that aren't with us, like Russia? It doesn't matter. They're not with us anyway. So let's take care of our friends in Turkey and Israel and other allies that are close by that are being affected by this.
Yeah, I think if we take action and we show force and we do it right, it's going to show the world that we can take charge and we can be responsible and law-abiding citizens of the world, and yet not go into regime change and also not be warmongers. So but that's a tight road
it's
to
tough,
war.
and I think that's why I get into your last question about it being split, because people are really struggling with these children being burned to death and being butchered, and and suffering and dying. But before, we've got our own problems to deal with, so it's tough. I mean, what do we do? How far do we go? But a lot of it is how we implement it too. Are we going to use drones? Are we going to use a scalpel? Are we going to use a sledgehammer? That's a discussion Congress should have.
Well, they are talking about, well, obviously the U.S. wants to see Assad out, but If Assad does leave Syria, do you create another Iraq or another Libya? Is that a problem?
Absolutely a problem. I mean, as I said before, this whole thing is a conflict. Okay, it's an approach avoidance. There are other conflicts, approach, but this one, if you really get rid of the regime, then who takes over? And that's a big question mark because, again, we don't know who the rebels are. We don't really know what their mindset is. We don't know if it's going to be worse.
Well, that's one of the big questions. Who are
But if
these
we know
rebels?
for a fact that Assad is using chemical weapons on his own people, he's an international criminal. Period. Okay, you can't get rid of somebody like that.
Okay.
That's different than some of the other situations we've been talking about, like in Egypt. That's a different situation. This is clear. The red line is there, and that's what President Obama said early on. He needs to act upon it. You don't do that to people. We have to stop that.
well,
It's certainly going to be a very difficult week, obviously, for President Obama, but the entire world is watching this one, and so will we. Thanks for staying on, and don't go away, everyone. When we come back, we will take a look back at one of the most famous speeches ever made. We're talking about Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. If he were alive now, how would Dr. King feel about race relations in the U.S.?